All right, I hereby call the regular meeting of the LASD Board of Trustees to order. A recording and/or broadcast of this meeting is being made at the direction of the board, and the recording and/or broadcast may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. We'll start by calling the roll. Mr. Ivanovich?
Here.
Mr. Talio?
Here.
Ms. Beiser?
Here.
Ms. Surkay?
Here.
I am here. All board members are present. We will move on to agenda approval. Does anyone have comments or motion about the agenda?
I'd like to move that we approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Motion to approve the agenda made by Vladimir, seconded by Shali. I'll do a roll call vote. Vladimir?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Shali?
Yes.
I vote yes. Motion passes 5-0. D3 closed session report. No action was taken in closed session. D4 superintendent update. Mr. Bear.
Yes, good evening. It's good to see you again. Just wanted to share with you that we did have our transitional kindergartners and first graders return to campus today for their in-person blended learning. Made it to a few of the campuses. It looked like a positive start. Teachers, staff, principals just did a fantastic job preparing for the students' return. You know, the protocols were in order and the expectations very clear. And just wanted to congratulate each of our schools for that, especially our teachers. I know it's been a great deal of work preparing for that, ensuring that, you know, our kids' safety is taken care of, their teachers' own personal safety is taken care of, and that we can get back to some semblance of in-person learning. So was just great to see kids bouncing out of cars today and onto campus. And so just wanted to offer a big thank you. We had about 100 to 185 students back on campuses today. There were students on all 9 of our physical campuses. That includes our special day class students and teachers and staff who've been back for 2 full weeks now, starting their 3rd week. So having the TK through first grade students join them was terrific. So thanks for that.
Thank you. Moving on to section E, the consent calendar. Do any board members who would like to discuss anything on the consent calendar?
Hey, Brian, this is Randy.
Yes, Randy.
One of the items, it's not an amendment to an agreement, Gray Star agreement. I forget which item it is. I don't have it in front of me.
E3.
Yeah, there's not an amendment. It's actually the lease agreement with Gray Star. Just the title of the item is.
Gotcha.
So I'd like to move that we approve the consent items as presented.
Is that a second, Charlie? I think you were muted.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, I will second.
All right, motion to approve consent items E1 through E4 made by Vladimir, seconded by Shali. Any further discussion? If not, I will call the roll. Vladimir.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Jessica.
Yes.
Shali.
Yes.
I vote yes. Motion passes 5-0. All right, moving on to section F, employee request to address the board. Starting with Los Altos Teachers Association. I don't see Ricky here. If there's someone else who is here to speak for LATA, if you could raise your hand. Not seeing a raised hand, so unless. All right, we're from CSEA. Seeing none, we will move on to community comments, section G. This time is reserved for citizens and employees to address the board on items that are not on the agenda. The board is not permitted to discuss or take action on non-agenda items except to instruct the superintendent to review the matter further, report back to the board at a subsequent meeting, or place the matter on a future agenda. The board may make a brief comment or ask clarifying questions. So do we have anyone? Oh, sorry. Anyone who would like to make a comment on items not on the agenda, please use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Do we have anyone who wishes to comment on any items not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move on further to action discussion items and start with H1, report on opening a school in the LASD Plus program. Staff will provide updates on the status of students returning to in-person learning. The presentation on the planning and implementation of LASD Plus program will also be provided. Mr. Baer.
Yes, thank you. I want to welcome Mrs. Kimberly Attell and Ms. Bhavna Narula. Kimberly's principal at Oak, Bhavna is the principal at Block, and they are going to share some information about what we are calling the LASD Plus program and how it will serve our students. So Bhavna or Kimberly, I'm not sure which of you is starting.
Thank you, Mr. Baer. Good evening, everyone. Happy Monday. We are so excited to share with you today a targeted and systematic model of distance learning support for our students with the most intense needs. And this would be support in person. Marcy, can I have the next slide, please? So just a quick review, Kimberly and I will be co-presenting today. We will share the purpose, the why behind LASD Plus, how will we go about identifying students. We'll share about sort of the program as we envision it and the anticipated student outcomes. And Kimberly, take it away.
Great. Marcy, will you move? Marcy, will you move to the next slide? Marcy, will you move to the next slide?
She's already there. Oh, yeah.
Oh, there you go. Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So the purpose of why, we really, with kids being away from the school sites for 7 months, we know that distant learning can be challenging, and we know that hybrid learning presents its own challenges. And we really want to make sure that we provide something for our children that's an extension of our regular program to support those students in an on-campus program. We know that our children who might have different challenges for various reasons, they need that in-person time. And so we wanted to create something where we could really support our children on campus when they're not at school during hybrid, or they're not there when they're in distant learning format. So that is our why. Marcy, could you turn to the next slide, please? So when thinking about the who is eligible, we really wanted to think about kind of 4 different areas. The students who are historically underrepresented, children who might be struggling and through attendance, struggling with coming online or getting their assignments completed online when they're in the distant learning format, students who might be struggling academically, and so students who we might typically refer through our care team. And just a little bit of background about our care team. Each school site has a group of teachers and staff members that meet through our kind of organized teams, where we look at student data. We're looking at attendance, we're looking at academic performance, we're looking at some of those variables of at-risk children, and seeing kind of who might be struggling in this format of learning. And so when we look at those students, we want to prioritize who might need that extra support, who might need that extra support of more in-person learning, or support throughout those days that they are in asynchronous learning. Currently, what we are looking at doing is understanding that at each school, because we all have different cultures and different situations and needs at each of our schools, that it will look different, a little bit different at each of those schools. And we're going to prioritize Almond School and Santa Rita School to start our LASD Plus programs at each of those sites. So those will be our first schools where we will start this program. Marcy, if you can move to the next slide, please.
Sorry. Thank you, Kimberly. Some information about the how. So the way we envision how we will identify students is through our care teams, as Kimberly mentioned, and the school principal in collaboration with the care team. All of the school principals participate on the care team at our sites as well, will be responsible for approving eligibility and working with families. So we really want to sort of bring back sort of the site ownership while being systematic district-wide. We plan on staffing this distance learning support center, the LASD Plus Center, through classified personnel. We envision the hours being from 8:30 a.m. to 3 p.m., 5 days a week, and students who are students will attend this on their designated distance learning days. And so we will identify a schedule, and we will know who are the students who will be attending on particular days, and we'll be working with families and getting commitment from families around attendance. We will be prioritizing based on the eligibility criteria that Kimberly just shared and the commitment from families. We recognize that, one size fits all approach will not work, right? We recognize that some of our schools, Santa Rita, Almond, and Egan, may have students with a higher intensity of needs. So we will be prioritizing opening this center at those sites before we move on to the next set of sites as well. Just in recognition of the fact that these are the sites where we might have groups of students who have more intense needs as well. Marcy, can I have the next slide, please? I want us to sort of think about, sort of the outcomes that we've outlined here broadly from a developmental assets perspective, right? Creating adult connectedness for students. We recognize that distance learning is and has been challenging for groups of students, and so we see this as a place where it's a quiet and caring place for students to work. We envision that a group of caring adults providing individualized support the outcome will be a higher level of student engagement. Because there is individualized support, we along with them comes the benefit of mentoring these students, working on executive functioning skills. This also, that personalized touch also gives us the opportunity to identify some basic food, health, safety, and social emotional needs. So as these personnel who are staffing can then help connect this family with the kind of support they might need. We understand that these, classified personnel will be working with our students. We will be sort of in the progress monitoring set up, monitoring how these students are progressing academically, socially, emotionally. We also envision a communication between this child's teacher and the distance learning support provider, so that there is a feedback loop and the student has a better wraparound support from when they are in person in their classroom to when they're in person in the distance learning support center. Can I have the next slide, please? Kimberly.
Thank you, Bhavna. And when we think about those supports, we think about a continuum of supports in LASD Plus. from the quiet place of learning that a child can be there. They can have that adult supervision to support them through their learning plans, through maybe extra mentoring they might need, or extra tutoring through different concepts where they might have a parent that's unable to do that at home. I think one of those big things, and when you think about the continuum of support, is that mental health connection for our kids. And we hear often that kids are very, really struggling at home, working independently, and having that mental health check-in is so critical to their success. So these are the kinds of things that we see in a continuum of supports from a variety of needs at each of our school sites, where we can really help our children and make sure that that safety net is there for all of our students. Marcy, would you turn to the next slide, please? So when thinking about this quote, we understand that we are just now coming back to our campuses. Our students have been gone for 7 months, which is a long time. And with these challenges that we have, we also know that it also provides opportunities. And that's really what when we read this quote, that's what we want you to think about. This is an opportunity for us to build a program for our students, to support those students who have been away from campus, and give that extra support across a week long, even if their class can only be there 2 days a week. And so that's really what we want you to think about, our most vulnerable learners and their needs, and how we can support them in a systematic way at each of our school sites. So Marcy, if you would turn to the next slide. We know you might have some questions. We would love to be able to field those for you.
Thank you. And Shelly, why don't you start?
Thank you. That's really wonderful. And there's so many wonderful things I can say in praise of what you're doing. Thank you for looking at developmental assets. Thank you especially for looking at mental health and just making sure that our kids are in stable home environments. I had just a couple of questions actually, just to clarify for me. On one of the slides, you said you prioritize based on commitment from families. Can you please explain what that means? And is this drop-in or a full day? Like, do kids come in for an hour, or do they come in for the whole time? Thanks.
So when we say commitment from families, we really sort of envision a partnership, right? Like, we recognize that our list of eligible students might be, longer at some of our sites, and we want to prioritize those sites as well. But we also have this partnership with families because we do rely on sort of family schedules to be able to have these students attend the Distance Learning Support Center. And so, our goal is to be able to partner with families from that commitment standpoint, that they will be bringing these students to the Distance Learning Support Center. We also, we envision that these students will attend the entire day, but we will have a designated schedule for them, right? There might be a case where a family might say, I can only bring my child at 10 o'clock. Well, that's not going to preclude a kid from attending just because they can't be there at 8:30. So we envision the partnership with families. That's why we go back to sort of, the original point that Kimberly made around care teams and the principals kind of working together to be able to identify students who will benefit from a distance learning support center. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, perfectly. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Other questions? Steve, Vladimir.
Yeah, I had Kimberly or Bob, either one. I also had a question about the commitment there. And the thought that crossed my mind was that the families where parents may not be able to make as big a commitment are precisely the ones that we want to help, right? And so just as long as you're sensitive to that, that's fine there. I also had a question on the mental health check-ins. What's involved there? Because are we going to have a psychologist look at that, or is there something else that we're going to do to sort of keep track of the mental health of these kids?
Sure, I'll go ahead and take that one. So each school site has a psychologist, and they are part of our care team. They're integral in helping identify kids and working with all of the students at the school site. So having them part of this process, and not only part of the process, but part of the check-in. They also support students through our CHAC services and coordinate those services for children. So each of the school site has that extra support of counseling provided, and that might be something that would be appropriate to provide for our students in this program, and figure out a way of working that into that day or into that weekly schedule for those students.
Yeah, good, thank you. This is a detailed question. On the eligibility slide, you have DL0, which I assume is distance learning 0, and DL3, but not DL1 and DL2. And I just wanted to know what the levels were. That's all I know.
Want me to do that one?
You're an expert at this.
So a DL0 really means that the child did not participate in any way in distance learning. They didn't check in to a meet. They didn't turn in any work, that they were essentially absent for the day. So that's a number that we're looking at. And a DL3 is a student who might have shown up on a meet for a short period of time, but is not doing the work, or vice versa. They might be doing the work, but they're not showing up on a meet. So it's a limited amount of participation in distance learning. And then a 1 is that they are fully participating, they're doing all of their work, and they're showing up to every meet throughout the day. And a 2 is a little bit less than that.
Okay, all right. I did have one more question. Yeah, so we're putting this plan into effect, and then at some point we want to review how the plan went, and do you have an idea when that might be? When could we expect sort of feedback on that? Jeff or Sandra or anybody?
Well, I know we're getting very close to opening up our first 2 programs at Almond and Santa Rita. And as we figure out exactly who will be invited to join, I'm sure that we want to look at maybe a 6-week cycle cadence to look at school performance, to look at that social and emotional needs of the students who are participating. So we still need to flesh that piece out in some detail, Vladimir, but I would expect like a 6-week cadence, kind of a progress update for students.
Okay, all right, great. One of the reasons I ask is because if anything this pandemic has taught us is that once we implement something, we learn. And so the sooner we can get some feedback into things, the better off we are. Kimberly and Bob, now thank you very much for spearheading this. And Sandra, of course, you're in the background always. Yeah.
Thank you.
I second all of the thank yous. I just had a couple other questions, so I'm clear in my mind. Do you have a sense at the moment about how many kids you're expecting either in the first Santa Rita and Almond wave or sort of overall once it's built out?
Well, Jeff, you might want to add, but I know right now principals have been working on kind of developing their lists through their care teams and understanding kind of the criteria and the need of each of the students. Are we running them at 10, Jeff? Was that the number that so 10 students with each adult for each group? And I believe we've hired for one group at each of the 2 schools at this point, but we're still hiring.
Is the plan to eventually have them at all schools, or does it depend on demand?
I'd say the plan is to have them at all schools, recognizing that some of the schools may have more than one cohort.
And is this only for students who are otherwise signed up for the hybrid cohort A, cohort B model, or is this also open to students who might be in the virtual only? I know it's a little weird to think of virtual only and yet bring them onto campus, but I don't know if that would be a possibility.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely a possibility, because just like the students who are in the blended program, it's quite possible that there are kids in the virtual school that are not engaging as well. So yes, is the answer.
And that partnership, I'll just add perhaps that partnership between the homeschool of the child and the care team, they're working very closely with the virtual school around students who might not be participating to the degree that we want or aren't having the success that we would hope to have. So that care team extends from the homeschool into the virtual school, depending on the student's homeschool.
Great. Yeah, I mean, as others said, I really appreciate that we're pushing forward with this, even through all the headwinds and figuring it out. So it's definitely needed, but not being done at all districts. So I appreciate all the partnerships that are going into this.
Brian, I have a
question.
Jessica,
go ahead.
You have the Santa Rita and Almond as the first schools. Is there, other than the fact that we're not bringing the junior highs back, is there a reason that, say, Egan's not, they're coming, we're not having it instituted for Egan, seeing that it's a feeder school from those 2 campuses and they could have kids with the same issues?
I'd say that's wrapped up more in hiring than anything else. We're hiring as quickly as we can.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because I figured it's the same demographic, same issues.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other further comments on this topic? All right. So Jeff, do you have a opening update as well under this agenda item?
Wanted to share some additional information and some proposals to the board as well. So Marcy, can you bring that second slide deck up?
Do you want to take public comment on what we just
I'm sorry.
Go any further?
You're absolutely right, Steve. I completely spaced out. Apologies to everyone. We will now take public comment on this agenda item. To comment on this agenda item, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. I apologize for skipping over that earlier. Do we have anyone who wishes to comment on this portion of this agenda item? Seeing no hands, now we will let Jeff proceed to his second slide deck.
All right, wanted to, now that we have received students back on campus and have begun learning, as someone had said earlier, wanted to give you an update on where we think we're headed. So next slide, Marcy. Yeah, as I spoke to this earlier, we are elated. We have some students back on campus. As you know, our special day class students returned on September 28th. And today we welcome back transitional kindergarten, and first grade students, as you know, broken into 2 cohorts. A and B. Today we saw A students back on campus. Next slide. Just a reminder about what we're doing to ensure safety. Face coverings are required at all grade levels, all staff and teachers. Physical distancing is a requirement as well, 6 feet in the classroom and 25 feet between cohorts at lunchtime. We do have small numbers of kids on campuses right now, so this is a good time to practice that and get those routines implemented. And as I said, we are broken into A and B cohorts. Hand hygiene is also a focus, and we are ensuring that the cleaning and hygiene schedules are being put into place. We do have a daily symptom screening that goes on. We had a great success with that today. I think that's one of the things we're really looking for as each wave of students comes back, really looking to build those habits of making sure that we complete the daily symptom screener prior to arrival on campus. That actually goes for our students and our adults. Instruction, you're aware of this. We all are now in the blended learning. We have asynchronous days and synchronous days, both at school and at home. And of course, in addition, we have our virtual school up and running as well. And this is the day that the site-based plans at every one of our campuses really came to life. That was around drop-off and pickup, staggering those and ensuring that kids are noticing the areas taped off and where they can go and where they can't go. Many hallways have directions, and they're split much like a highway into two-way traffic. So the kids are doing a great job as I watch that unfold today. So next slide. We do have some, still have some challenges ahead. As I said, we have brought back our special day classes and our TKK and 1 students. Just to give you some context, this is 15 to 20 students on most campuses in TK, K, and 1, right? This doesn't include the special day class students, but if we're just talking about the regular ed students, we're talking about 15 to 20 students per campus that came back today. Looking at 6th through 8th grade, it is much more complex than our elementary classes. Our students have multiple teachers, and there will be multiple student cohorts in grades 6 through 8. As you know, in our junior high schools, the students see, up to 7 different teachers in a day. And our 6th grade really emulates certain portions of the junior high school schedule, even on an elementary campus, right? With departmentalization, where certain teachers in 6th grade teach certain subjects, and the students switch between teachers typically. So there are different protocols and operations required for those grade levels to effectively deliver instruction in person. We're also looking ahead at the calendar just with the timing of return with holidays and holiday breaks coming up. We also have trimester and quarter breaks to consider. So with that in mind, I am going to propose some modifications to our plan to return to campus. Next slide. And here it is. So across the top of the grade levels, just to orient you to the matrix there, across the top of the grade levels, and down the left side are some date categories. So if we start with the first there, the upper left, TK in first, the return date today. No problem, that one is underway. As we move across the top to grades 2 and 3, I am going to recommend that we delay by 1 week the return of our 2nd and 3rd grade students. The change to November 9th is going to be helpful as it coincides with the end of the trimester. And one thing we have learned in, especially with our first, our TK, K, and 1, we know there is disruption that occurs with this. And at the trimester, when report cards come due, we do want to make sure that we have our teachers with the students for whom they are reporting and providing report cards and subsequently conferences this trimester. So the move by 1 week will help with that. Additionally, grades 4 and 5, previously it was grades 4, 5, 6. I am going to suggest that we separate grade 6 from grades 4 and 5 and also have them return 1 week later. With 4 or 5 grade levels on campus between TK and 3, I think that additional week after the Thanksgiving break will provide that opportunity to make sure routines are ingrained and followed before we introduce the next set of students on campus, right? Our upper grade students in grades 4 and 5. So this is, again, a 1 week shift. Previously, it was November 30th. Now I am recommending for grades 4 and 5, December 7th. For grade 6, with all of the holiday breaks in there, I think it's going to make most sense to return them after the new year. Again, not the first Monday, but the second Monday back on January 11th. This will also provide opportunity. We're going to need to understand how many students are making the return to in-person learning. And with those numbers, understand what the implications are for the departmentalization and rotation of students between teachers, because the number of kids is going to make a difference in those schedules. And we'll need to work with the 6th grade teachers to figure that out. Grades 7 and 8 is the most complicated return. And so with that, it's going to make the most sense to make that change at the semester. It is a logical break point for them. And Keith and Bob, the principals at Block, or at Egan and Block, respectively, are working with task forces that we discussed pulling together to really talk about the nuances of the schedule and what that might look like. This is very similar to what the high school is doing right now, understanding how we might return kids. There are, in the junior high school, so many more factors to consider with 7 kids and children taking multiple classes, both electives and all their core content as well. So those are the modified grade level returns I am suggesting. With the number of, or the opportunities to change for grades TK 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5 between now and December, I think it's going to make most sense looking ahead. I'd like to suggest some modifications to the number of switch dates as well. We do know after the TK1, as I said, it is quite disruptive depending on the number of students that switch for both teachers and for students. So being more strategic with that is going to make more sense. So as we look ahead, January 20th, the bottom line there, program switch deadlines. The December 7th would be a notification date for those families that want to switch on January 20th, right? That would include our 7th and 8th, of course, but also any of the other grade levels. And then looking ahead, 8 weeks instead of 6. It's going to make sense to offer the next switch date at the end of March. That aligns better with a quarter and trimester end date, and have a March 8 notification date for us for switches to be made on March 29th. Next slide before I take board comments. Just some ideas of what's next. What's next means after tonight. Certainly we'll communicate this with the community going forward tomorrow about these changes. It'll be important to ensure parents are aware of these. We will bring back to the board at the meeting on November 9th a report out of what the 6th grade and the junior high school program will look like. We should have a framework built out by then. So we'll bring that to the board on that date for comment and feedback. And then immediately following, we'll have a series of town halls for both staff, 6th grade staff and junior high school staff, as well as parents at those grade levels. And if you go back one slide, Marcy, all of that, the town halls and input. Marcy, are you able to go back? Thank you. Would take place before that December 7th decision date. We would look to have the town halls completed by the Thanksgiving break. That will give 1 week when we return for any questions to be answered during that time. And then we'll look for that December 7th date for the date by which parents have to notify. So go ahead and go forward, Marcy. I think that was the last slide. Yep, that's the last one. So any clarifying questions? I know we want to take some public input as well.
Yeah, any clarifying questions from board members? Seeing shaking head, Steve, no? Okay. Yeah, so we will take public comment on this portion of the agenda item. To comment, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced as it is your turn to speak. Do we have anybody who would like to comment now? Realize that this is sort of the first information around this. So as always, please feel free to send us email, trustees@LASD schools, if you don't feel like you have your thoughts organized right now. I'm not seeing any hands, so we'll move on to any board discussion or comments. Anybody? Steve, Jessica?
I'd just like to say that I like the new schedule. I think it's a good move for the district, really, especially more so on the 6th through 7th, 8th grade timeline, even in 4th and 5th grade. I do like that it's starting with a little buffer after Thanksgiving, and just then also the holidays as it relates to 6th and 7th and 8th grade. I think because of human behavior, it's helpful as it relates to this virus, not only for the staff, but for the students and really the whole community. So I like that. I do have one question. On the page where you do have the proposed dates, perhaps it's a little confusing when you see all grades and you have March 29th and March 8th. A better way to communicate that, you know, when we're talking about all grades and the March 8th and March 29th, it's a program, you can make the decision to program switch on March 8th, and then you would be switching on March 29th. I understand that this is kind of, we're changing this instead of doing the 6 weeks, every 6 weeks cadence, correct?
That's right.
So I don't know if we can somehow communicate, want to make sure we communicate that a tiny bit better. I get it, but it took me a little time to figure that out.
Yep, we can do that. Absolutely.
And that's all I have.
Okay. I think in the sort of detail of the proposal, the only thing that jumps out at me is the December 7th date to potentially choose to switch programs on January 20th. Just seems like a really long lag time, just thinking about why people might want to switch. And then also you have potentially on your end, the back end of work of both trying to reopen the junior high schools and also deal with all of this other potential switching on the same date in late January. So my question would be whether there's a way to let families choose in January if they want to switch, and then if the switch date would then have to move a week or two, that would make sense to me potentially. But on the larger level, I do feel like we should sort of recognize that, you know, this is a big change. Unfortunately, it is pushing back the return of junior high students to campus by 6 or 8 weeks. I mean, it's a fairly significant rollback, and for 6th grade students as well. And I know that's not something that you guys do lightly. I think we may have been the only district in the county, I'm not sure, that was hoping to bring junior high students back before January. And it's, you know, it's a little disappointing. I totally understand all the reasons that we weren't able to do that. I mean, I sort of get it. And if you don't occasionally miss your stretch goals, then you're not being aggressive enough. So, you know, I want to say thank you to the partnership for both you guys and all the teachers that let us think that we might be able to do that, and understand that there will be parents who are disappointed. There will be parents who are relieved. Everybody's got different opinions, but I think it's also, in my personal opinion, it's also just sort of a recognition in hearing from County Department of Public Health that the restrictions are not softening or going away, certainly in the short term, maybe not in the medium term. And so I think it's become clear to me that we've got to be a little bit less ambitious than perhaps we were hoping to be going in. So thank you for all the work that went into this, but I understand. Thank you to the parents who are out there who are going to have to readjust a little bit, because I don't want to minimize the impact. You know, we've been trying to be as transparent as possible. Unfortunately, when you try to be transparent in an unprecedented situation, that means that you put information out that then has to change, just because once you get closer, you realize what you didn't know going in. So other than that, I don't think I have any other specific questions. Does anybody else from the board have anything? We'll get, I'm assuming, another kind of general how things are going update at our next meeting in October. Is that right, Jeff?
Yes, we will. We'll bring that. We'll bring you some images as well, so you can see what's happening in our classrooms also.
Okay. All right, unless anybody has anything else. Sorry, Vladimir.
It might be worth mentioning again that one of the reasons why we're able to do these changes, to make this progress, is because of our teachers and the cooperation they've given us. So thanks a huge amount for that.
Yes. All right. Seeing nothing else, I think we are done with H1, and we will move on to H2. Memorandum of Understanding with the Los Altos Teachers Association. District staff and the Los Altos Teachers Association have drafted a memorandum of understanding to identify contractual modifications necessary due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The attached document represents the changes agreed upon to date. Mr. Baer.
Thank you. So this memorandum of understanding is really about recognizing that as teachers transition from virtual or from their distance learning to in-person or blended instruction, there is time needed to set up classroom, right? Because they have not yet set up classrooms for their students by and large, because we haven't had students in the classroom. So this MOU really makes that time available on the Thursday and Friday prior to the return to in-person instruction. So I present it for your consideration and recommend approval.
All right, thank you. Just for clarification, the sort of old reopening dates are in this MOU, but they're in sort of planned language. So I just want to clarify that we don't need to modify the MOU.
Yeah,
given
that's
those
correct.
changes.
The dates were written as planned. Really, the operative language is around the shall, and we shall provide 2 days for them to prepare classrooms.
Gotcha. Any other board questions? All right, we will now take public comment on this agenda item. To comment, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. We have at least one.
Our first speaker is Roberta Pine.
Good evening. It's Roberta Pine, bargaining chair for the Los Altos Teachers Association. I want to first of all thank the board for listening to teachers and the administration for being responsive to our needs and our concerns about this year. And Brian, you pointed out already that yes, the dates are put in there, but they were planned and shall. So our SDC and special ed teachers have already taken advantage of their 2 days to get their rooms ready, as well as the TK, Kinder, and First. And so moving forward, those teachers will be trying to get as much planning and preparation together in those 2 days prior to that, as they are always doing and working hard, as you know. And I just want to also add, thank you for looking at reevaluating the dates to the reentry for certain grade levels. And so we work in conjunction with the administration, and we start bargaining again tomorrow. And so we will clarify even more related to the reopening. So again, thank you for listening and being responsive. And we continue to hope to have a good working relationship with the school board and the administration and the association. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Roberta. Seeing no further comments, I will close the public comment. Any further board discussion? Seeing shaking heads, since this is an action item, I'm prepared to entertain a motion.
I'd like to move that we approve the MOU with the Los Altos Teachers Association as presented, understanding that the dates are flexible.
I'll second.
Motion to approve the MOU made by Vladimir, seconded by Shali. I will call the roll. Steve?
Yes.
Shali?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Vladimir?
Yes.
I vote yes. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Thank you, Roberta. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, everybody who's involved in our relationship with our teachers. Moving on, H3, Measure N Citizens Oversight Committee. Measure N Citizens Oversight Committee membership. The Board of Trustees will consider the appointment of a nominee to a position on the Measure N Citizens Oversight Committee. Mr. Kenyon.
Yeah, I'm going to start with a brief update. We actually have 2 vacancies on our Bond Oversight Committee. We have one for a senior representative and one for a parent representative. And we had a potential nominee for the senior representative who has withdrawn because of another commitment. So we will continue to continue to look for someone, but the bylaws for that committee allow a current member to also serve more than one interest group. And we have a senior on the committee who is serving a different interest group, and will continue to serve the senior interest group in the meantime. I have a dog barking.
What about the canine interest group is what he wants to ask.
Sorry about that. But tonight we have a nominee for the parent representative position. It is a very active Covington parent, Janelle Gieselman. And this is an action item for you. We're recommending that you approve her as the parent representative for a 2-year term. You have a little bit of information. She has to submit an application. So you have that as your backup. And I know Jessica knows her. Jessica, do you want to add any information about her before the board considers voting for her?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So I've known Janelle for probably about 4 years now. As long as I've known her to be a very active member of our community, and also very level-headed. So when I heard that she was interested, I was super excited. It's important for us to have, unbiased, level-headed people on this committee. And she's also, as you can see from her application, an attorney. And really the job of the COC is really to make sure that we're spending the bond monies according to the letter of the law of the bond. And she would be really good at that. So I highly recommend her.
Thanks, Jessica. So Brian, I'll turn it back to you for questions and board discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any preliminary board questions? No. We will now take public comment on this agenda item. To comment on the agenda item, members of the public should use the raised hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Do we have anyone who wishes to comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll return to further board discussion. Anybody have any further questions or comments? I look through, it seems like a solid candidate. Seeing none, I'm prepared to entertain a motion.
I'd like to move that we approve Janelle for the Bond Oversight Committee vacancy that we have.
Second.
Motion to approve the appointment of Janelle Gieselman to the district's Measure N Citizens Oversight Committee is made by Vladimir, seconded by Shally. Any further discussion? I will call the roll. Steve?
Yes.
Shally?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Vladimir?
Yes.
I vote yes. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Janelle, for being willing to serve.
Oh.
Moving on to H4, sharing of parcel tax proceeds with Willis Charter School. I'm not going to read this whole preamble. Randy, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, by our Measure GG latest parcel tax election, we are sharing the parcel tax proceeds with the charter school, Willis Charter School. As part of that agreement, they annually report what they spent their portion of the proceeds on. We've done this the last few years. Tonight we're presenting their expense, what they spent the monies on in last year, 2019-20 fiscal year. And you can see it was all on teacher salaries. This is just a requirement for them to present this to you for your approval.
All right, any preliminary board questions? Any public comment on this agenda item? Just to clarify, we're not approving their expenditure so much as just verifying that we've gotten the report that the law requires.
Correct.
Seeing no public comments, I'm prepared for motion.
I'd like to move that we approve whatever it was as presented.
Anyone like to second?
I'll second.
Motion to accept the BCS parcel tax proceeds reports as required by Measure GG, made by Vladimir, seconded by Shally. I'll call the roll. Steve.
Yes.
Shally.
Yes.
Jessica.
Yes.
Vladimir.
Yes.
I vote yes. Motion passes 5-0. We will now move on to board and administration comments. I'm just going to go top to bottom of my screen here. Sandra, or you're shaking your head? All right.
I
Steve?
did not make my notes tonight. Sorry.
Steve, anything? Shally, anything? Jessica? Vladimir? Randy, anything further?
No,
Nope.
sorry.
Jeff, anything further?
I do not know.
What about Randy's dog? Anything
Yeah.
further?
The dog's fine, thank you.
Let's see. There is another Santa Clara County elected officials call with Public Health Department tomorrow. There's also Mountain View City will be considering the changes to their various neighborhood plans required by their school strategies pivot as part of their meeting tomorrow. I think they will also be allocating funds to Mountain View Wisman and the high school district from one of the projects that falls within essentially Mountain View Wisman and is delivering a certain dollar amount of public benefits, some of which may be directly apportioned to the school districts. If anybody is interested in joining those meetings.
You said that's tomorrow night?
That's tomorrow night, yes. Start 6:30. I'm not sure when they'll get to the schools thing, given how it didn't look like there was a ton on their agendas, but I can never gauge their agendas. I think that is all that I had. So seeing nothing else, we are adjourned.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you,
Thank
Jeff.
you, everybody.
Thank you,
Bye.
Sam.
Night, everyone.
Bye-bye.